Dan Rubenstein, it is time to embark on a wonderful journey through the ACC, the aforementioned all Costco conference. Costco, not a sponsor. Still could be, Dan. How are you today? You excited?
I'm great. I don't think Costco needs us, right? I don't think Costco needs our audience, as beautiful and vast and wonderful and international and pretty big at this point, which is really cool. They don't need us because Costco has done a pretty good job marketing and selling itself, where maybe we should start paying Costco to be included in their offerings. I'm good, Ty. I think the all Costco conference as a defining term for the ACC, I'd love to create something new, but I don't think it's ever been more clear that it is the all Costco conference, quality and bulk. As we spread across this great land, adding a team in Texas and 2 in California to the ACC. So it's like the America's Coast Conference, I guess. But this is... It's not that they added clear quality, but they added bulk. So that kind of counts to help define where the ACC is. And I'm really, honestly, I'm into where the ACC is. However long it lasts in this form, I'm really into it the deeper I got into the weeds. Hey, sorry for the quick interruption, but it'd be incredible if you considered subscribing to the Solid Verbal YouTube channel right down below.
I am too. You know, we've joked for years about the quote-unquote all Costco conference. And when we did that episode, I don't know, what was it, like a month and a half ago? And when we were talking about Brett Yormark and maybe selling away the naming rights to the Big 12 to call it the All-State 12, not sure what they decided on there, if that's ever going to happen. We forgot to mention as part of that episode our running joke about the all Costco conference. It is now both literally and figuratively possible. We will talk about some of the reasons why in this episode. We've also got 2 more episodes on the ACC coming up. So the way that we have structured our previews this year for power conferences especially, this episode today is going to be bigger picture, high-level storylines, what's changing, what's not changing. We're going to go through our power tiers. And then in parts 2 and 3, we're going to go through individual team previews. Really get down into the weeds, talk again about those teams, what's changing, what's new, what are the emerging storylines, why are they dangerous, why are they not so dangerous.
There you go.
Thank you for that 1 second of Kenny Loggins.
Yeah, you're welcome.
That won't get us in any copyright trouble. Appreciate that.
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not. Hopefully not. So that is the plan now moving forward into preview season. This is the first power conference that we're doing this cycle. We just got done doing all 5 of the group of 5 conferences over our last 2 episodes. So go back and you can listen to parts 1 and 2, where, of course, we went through the Sun Belt, the American, Mountain West, Mack, and who did I leave out? Conference USA.
Yes.
All those now in the books. It is time to get down to brass tacks and talk through all things ACC. Of course, if you are new here, hit follow, hit subscribe so that you don't miss any of our episodes. We're going to be dropping episodes to the public feed now every Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday for the foreseeable future, deep into the season, probably for some period of time after the season. So we're really starting to amp things up here at Solid Verbal HQ. Excited to have you with us. If you really like what we do, verballers.com, that's where you can go and get all these episodes a little bit early without the ads. There are many other bonus perks, not the least of which is our Discord community. We're starting up an online dynasty now, Dan.
Yeah.
We have selected Miami as the team that you and I are co-opting.
Yeah, it feels right that Notre Dame's history with Miami, Catholics versus convicts, and Oregon's prickly recent history with Mario Cristobal, I think we're just leaning into it, right?
We are leaning into it. I did play an exhibition game with Miami. I was very pleased with Damian Martinez. We could talk about,
of course.
We could talk about that, of course, as we get deeper into this episode and do some Miami analysis. But if that's something you're interested in, again, verballers.com is where we're going to be conducting all of that fun. And of course, many more exciting perks to come as we get a little bit closer into the season and into the month of August, Dan.
Yeah.
Shall we dive in?
Let's.
Welcome to the Danger Zone.
The ACC.
Ooh, okay, sure. Can I ask you something? Are we doing tiers? Are we establishing tiers on this episode, or will that be another ACC episode?
We're establishing tiers on this episode, and I'm glad you bring that up.
Yeah.
Because I suspect there may also be some TEARS.
God.
As we talk through these. No, I'm serious now.
Okay.
Take a knee. Take a knee for a second.
All right.
There's a possibility here as we go through these teams that there is one point of disagreement that is the most intense we've ever had in our however many years of doing this show.
Yeah.
And it could signal the end of the show.
Okay.
It depends on how things go in this conversation. But you have indicated to me that there is a team that you disagree very strongly with my assessment.
Okay.
And I'm a little bit fearful of what it could mean for you and I as friends.
That's fine. You already saw that Monster.com had an ad for a host at Applebee's or Texas Roadhouse? Texas Roadhouse. So you've got your future lined up already.
That's my backup plan.
Can I ask you something about the tiers?
Please.
Is it too far down the free advertising rabbit hole to break up our all Costco conference tiers into sections of a Costco warehouse?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Why not?
I don't think that like BJ's or Sam's Club or Price Club, well, Price Club doesn't exist anymore. Costco swallowed it up. But like, I don't think they were going to come in and advertise. And then upon hearing our big picture ACC show, we're like, guys, it's just not going to happen. Not anymore. So
right.
I don't know if we, I think about like the meaty middle as like the butcher section of a Costco and perhaps home improvement with like the top tier is cleaning up the rest of the conference, something like that. Or home improvement is the bottom of the conference. And it's, the groceries that, these top recruiters are building the best because they're doing their own grocery shopping. So we don't have to lean that far and commit to the bit to that degree, but that's just where my brain went. Sorry. Continue.
There are 3 new teams this year.
Yes.
In the ACC. We've got 17 in total. The 3 newbies are Cal and Stanford from the West Coast and SMU from Texas. We will figure out where they rank in the pecking order here momentarily. There are a bunch of new coaches in the ACC this year. Bill O'Brien, going back to his native Boston to coach BC. Manny Diaz leaving Penn State, where he was defensive coordinator, going to take another bite at the ACC apple, right? Kind of got a raw deal last time around at Miami. This time now going to step in at Duke. Fran Brown, a guy that I think you and I are infatuated with, at least to some extent.
I think we've always been such a pro-Cuse podcast that we can't help ourselves when there appears to be new positivity coming out of Central Western New York. Yeah.
Fran Brown taking over at Syracuse. He also hired Elijah Robinson from Texas A&M to be his defensive coordinator, which is not only great for the defense, but also really good for recruiting. They have had a nice showing here in the early part of his tenure on the recruiting trail with the portal and whatnot.
For sure.
Again, we'll get into that much more. Some other notable, I think, coaching moves that we could mention as part of this. It's certainly not all of them, but Mack Brown hired Jeff Collins to come in and run the North Carolina defense. We'll see if 3 can be a charm for Mack to get that defense resolved. We'll talk about what that means, what that looks like if you're a North Carolina fan. And Pat Narduzzi, good old Nard Dog, man. Nard Dog going with Cade Bell, a 30-year-old offensive coordinator from Western Carolina, an FCS school.
Yes.
Who's going to come in and he's going to install an up-tempo offense with shotguns and pistols and motions.
And any sort of weaponry. Yeah.
Anything at all.
Yeah.
Going to look completely different. I posited on my notes here, and I will propose to you that we just refer to Pitt henceforth as New Pitt.
Okay.
All year, New Pitt.
New Pitt.
Because it's going to look very different.
Maybe, allegedly, right? That, like, we know what Cade Bell did at Western Carolina, but we've seen this before where a coach's vision, sometimes will neuter a coordinator's vision and experience. So, we're hopeful. I think, well, first of all, what else is new? Let's get into anything else new that jumps out in terms of coordinators.
There's a lot.
It's been a huge transfer conference, as expected with any.
That's where I was going to go next with it. I mean, there have been some really notable transfers that are now part of the ACC. Cam Ward, the big name, goes from Wazoo to Miami. He's going to be the starting quarterback at Miami. Damian Martinez, also going from the Pacific Northwest, from Oregon State, also to Miami, where he'll be the starting running back. We had Jordan Waters transfer within the conference. He was the guy at Duke, the running back.
Yes.
He's now going to be toting the rock at NC State. Ja'Cory Brooks is leaving Alabama. He's going to be presumably one of the top 2 wide receivers at Louisville.
Whoa.
NC State also went out and got Noah Rogers, the transfer receiver from Ohio State, to help boost their offensive side of the ball. There are many others on the offensive side. I won't go too deep into that. We can get into that more as we get into
Did you mention Cam Ward?
Previews. I mentioned Cam Ward.
Cam Ward.
Literally the first name I mentioned.
Okay, that's why I missed it. Yeah, I was still thinking about Costco when you said it. Yeah, I mean, this has been a tremendous conference for bringing in players. I mean, the big one to me, I mean, you mentioned, Ja'Cory Brooks at Louisville, but like on that same receiving core, Colin Lacey, I believe, from South Alabama, the Jags. I think there's a ton of upside with a number of the portal commitments, and certainly there are going to be schools who are more active than others. And you look across this conference, especially with a new coach at Syracuse, but also with what Florida State has done recently, what Louisville's done recently. Notably, you didn't mention anything with Clemson and the transfer portal, which we'll get into, I'm sure, more. But I think, like, even you said, Grayson McCall, Max Johnson at North Carolina, like, something about the ACC. Whatever happens, I think there's a reason for an overwhelming number of these teams to be optimistic about the upside potential of a current or incoming quarterback.
Oh, yeah.
Which is interesting to me, right? Like that you can go into a season, if you're a Georgia Tech fan, if you're a Syracuse fan, if you are a Virginia Tech fan, not incoming, but, a growing situation with Kyron Drones and hopefully that offense, that like, I don't think it's unrealistic for like 90% of these teams to think they've got something that could be somewhere between pretty good to full on special. DJ U at Florida State, his upside's obvious. That makes a conference go from we'll see to excited for these 44 games because of the upside at quarterback there.
There's a ton of upside. There's a ton of upside at quarterback. It's a very interesting conference. And I'll be honest, it's more interesting now that I did the work than it was just speaking broadly the way we have for most of the offseason. This happens every year. We do this every year. I feel like more often than not, for me, it's the case with the Big 12. This year with the ACC, there is a lot new. And they did hit the ground pretty hard with respect to the portal and bring guys over from other leagues. And it's going to be an interesting season. On the defensive side, if I could just round it out a little bit.
I was going to go there next. Continue.
A couple other names. We mentioned Syracuse a minute ago, but Fadil Diggs comes over from A&M to play
on the edge,
on the edge for Cuse. Earl Little from Bama to Florida State's a name that I think will have impact. Jihad Chestnut and Donovan Kaufman, Ohio State and Auburn, respectively, both of which going to NC State. NC State did a really good job getting some high-level transfers to come in and boost their situation. So, I mean, there are many, many more. We know the way it is with the transfer portal. Far too many names to just sit here and list them off. I'm sure we'll get into the impact players as we talk specific teams. But as a starting point, I think that illustrates where we're going with this, that there is a lot new in this conference. It's not just 3 teams. It's not just a handful of coaches, but with the influx of talent that is coming in, and I think especially with the influx of talent going out of a school like a Florida State,
to the draft, specifically.
To the draft.
They had, 10, 11 players drafted,
Yeah, not necessarily transfers, but guys just that are aging out of the system.
For sure.
It stands to reason that the pack of teams at the top is going to look a little bit different. It's going to include more teams. And I think there are some schools, as you mentioned earlier, that definitely have a puncher's chance to make things interesting. There is a very big, meaty middle in the ACC.
Yeah. There's also something interesting when you mention the defense. If we are going to agree that there's interesting upside at quarterback for like 15 of these 17 teams, it's 17, right? That's the new number 17. I need to memorize.
17, no divisions.
No divisions, 17 teams. I could see 13 of those 17 teams, fan bases, after the season saying, we had pretty high hopes for this defense, and it went really wrong. I could see that for a solid majority of these teams, that like, there's hope for teams like Virginia that they're going to take a step forward on defense. There's hope for teams like Georgia Tech hiring a new coordinator, which I thought was one of the better hires, not just within the conference, but in the country, bringing over a Duke guy, right? The Mike Elko's.
Santucci.
Yeah, Santucci. Tyler? Is it a Tyler Santucci? Yeah.
Yep.
To help improve things at Georgia Tech, and they obviously hit the portal pretty hard. But I could see that there's a lot of optimism and hope about, a defense ascending to average or just below average from sort of catastrophically bad at times, but not happening at all.
No. Yeah.
It could be another year in which you're like, hey, should we just go all overs this week? It's week 9 with the ACC matchups. Let's go all overs and see what happens, because that feels very much on the books.
Well, and it's, I think, a cautionary tale, speaking of the ACC and speaking of that exact scenario that you're describing.
Yeah.
What happened at Cal last year? Because Cal went to an up-tempo offense. Jake Spavital, he was supposed to come in and supercharge things.
He did.
And he did to some extent, but depending on the style of offense you run, it can have a knock-on effect with the defense. And so what happened? Well, numbers on offense got better. Some of the numbers on defense went way down because the defense was overstressed. And so when we talk about a team like a Pitt that is coming in and sort of doing something similar, also had some issues of their own on defense last year.
And Cal did before Spav too. Yeah. Defensively. Yeah.
But you get the point. The point is these things are holistic. They work together. And so whenever we talk about a drastic change in a system or even optimism within a system because there's a smaller change, there is always that possibility that something could go belly up.
Yeah.
I think that makes the conference super interesting for sure.
Yeah, and look, all of these teams, we can list out the teams who are trying to ascend to average on one side of the ball or the other. But the cool thing about this conference too is there are a number of teams who can, I think, rightfully claim really nice momentum coming into the year, whether it's because of a new coordinator, a new coach, a new quarterback, whatever. The way some of these teams finished last year or are jumping to a new level like SMU, there's I think a good amount of juice heading into the ACC season. Now, should also point out, and I don't know if this is where you want to insert this speech or this aspect of where the ACC is. This conference might not exist anywhere near what it looks like right now in a year, in 2 years, whatever. So,
we are a little bit too familiar with each other's beats at this point.
Yes.
You knew I was going there next. There is plenty of internet speculation at the moment and some legal action, frankly, that means that they're serious about it on behalf of at least Florida State and Clemson, looking to get out of the ACC's grant of rights. Those lawsuits and court cases are ongoing. I believe now they all have access to the actual documentation, what they signed up for. They can get a better look at it. For a while, that was under lock and key. So there are things that are moving on that front, but the speculation out there is that the Big 12 is going to gobble up anybody who is willing to leave the ACC, that the Big 12 could take on some private investment. We've talked about that before, and perhaps they would find a way to financially make it all work.
I have enjoyed, by the way, that with regard to Florida State and Clemson and them suing the ACC and the ACC then suing them for jurisdiction to have the case go forward in North Carolina and sort of tying everything up, and lawyers will profit very handsomely from this, that on sort of the reverberations of this all, that, Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti, I don't think Tony has been as vocal about it, but Greg Sankey has been like, we are not recruiters, right? We are very happy with where things stand right now. We are not looking to add teams, especially, if a conference is intact, blah, blah, blah. And everything coming out of the Brett Yormark mouthpieces is like, yes, we'll add. Give us all of the teams. Come on over here. Yes.
When I think of Brett Yormark, I think of the dude in The Rock, just because I like Cage movies.
Yeah.
Who wants to launch the missile at San Francisco.
Yeah. Itchy trigger finger. Yeah.
He's like that.
The itchy launch finger, excuse me. Yeah.
He's the crazy guy in the fight.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't know what he's capable of. You don't know what he's thinking of. In some cases, he may push the envelope in a good way. In other cases, he could blow the whole thing up.
Correct.
We don't know. And how or if one of these two schools, reportedly there are others who are at least considering their options, you'd have to be a fool not to.
Oh, yeah. It was like North Carolina and Virginia. And a bunch of Miami, a lot of attractive schools for different, combinations of athletic and academic and prestige reasons.
I think you have to be thinking about it bigger picture, because whoever is running these programs, you're not living in a vacuum. These aren't idiots. They know where things are headed. They know that the ACC is on thin ice. Right now, Florida State and Clemson seem to be the most vociferous of that membership, but there have been rumors of others like North Carolina and Thank you.
Yeah.
So there's just a lot going on, Dan.
There
a lot
is
going on right now, and it stands to reason, as you said, that this conference may not exist. I don't know, at some point in the very near future. But the good news for us as we're doing this episode is that it does exist.
Yes.
And I'm excited as hell about the ACC in 2024. Do we want to talk tiers, Dan?
Let's talk tiers.
You did.
That's right.
Thank you.
That's right.
You did the bottom half of the conference alphabetically.
Alphabetically.
So we don't have to break it up by divisions anymore. We just broke it by
NC State through Wake, and then you have BC through Miami.
NC State through Wake, BC through Miami.
Yeah.
Correct. Who are your true contenders
In that group?
in the whole group?
In the whole group, my contenders right now are Florida State, Clemson, Miami, NC State, with a couple of teams peeking in, but those are the ones that I feel best about from an either talent standpoint, recent results with the opportunity to build upon them. To put Miami there, not Virginia Tech, probably feels a little bit weird given that, Virginia Tech seems to have a little bit more momentum, although Miami did compete against Rutgers. They were right there. Yes? Can confirm?
I can't keep going. Keep going. We're going to disagree on more than we thought.
Okay. But I think Miami's upside. I'm still a believer. Mario Cristobal won a power conference. Cam Ward obviously has the ability to win games, the best of Cam Ward, adding in what was a young, but I think still very promising defense with Miami. I think they can contend. I think the reason
contend? Contend.
Yes. I
think Miami's going to win the conference.
You think Miami's going to win the conference?
Definitely.
Okay.
That is my pick.
That's your pick.
I am
That's fine.
all in on the Canes this year. And it's not just because we picked them for the online dynasty.
No, that's cool. No, I mean, I think they can't. There's obvious reasons why you shouldn't feel confident in Miami, that they lose games in dumb ways against what looks to be inferior teams. They've had offensive struggles. They've had waning attention over the course of, not just Mario Cristobal, but many Diaz Miami era teams have had that. So there are reasons to say if Miami were an ACC contender, they would have won the ACC at some point. Right. So Florida State is obvious why. Clemson, I think, because of the defense and their coaching track record, you still have to consider them. They've won a lot of ACC games, even as they've been a down team these past few years.
Quote unquote down team.
Quote unquote. For their own standards, by their own, trying to measure up against their own bar, they've been down because they've been a national championship caliber program in the last decade. NC State, I'm going to consider in that spot because of what they return. And when you're perennially in that 9-ish win zone, I have to tip my cap to having a special season, the opportunity to have a special season if you're adding, again, quarterback with upside. So I feel good about that and what NC State has done against the quote-unquote power contenders in this conference in the last 2-3 years, that they have the ability to win those games, and it's just not dumping off a random a week 8 game or something. So I think those are the contenders I have down here. Florida State, Clemson, Miami, NC State. Is that what I said at the top?
Yeah, I have the same four. And this is where we start getting into the whole emerging storylines / discussion portion of this episode.
Yeah.
Which is really the reason we structured it this way.
Do you have a 1B or a peek-in team or teams?
I do.
Okay.
I do. But I want to talk a little bit more about these 4 schools just for a minute.
Okay.
The biggest question going into this ACC season is how big a step back we're going to see out of Florida State. That's the biggest question on my mind. As I went through all of these teams, it was how big of a step back is Florida State taking?
Okay.
And relative to Florida State, are these other teams improving or not? I think Miami definitely got better. My question for Miami is if Mario Cristobal can win in spite of himself, to your point from earlier.
Yeah.
Clemson got a lot of flack for its stance on the transfer portal. I will wax poetic about that when we get into my Clemson preview. But there is a case to be made that Dabo didn't need to. That he didn't need to. That he could have gotten better quicker using the portal.
Yeah.
but that in reality, with what they did on the recruiting trail, especially what they added out wide, he didn't really need to. And Clemson, I think, will be better because of it. Okay. My perspective. The NC State question to me is more of like a theoretical than anything specific. I mean, I like Grayson McCall. It will be interesting to see how he does stepping up to a power league, play better teams throughout the course of a year. They've obviously added some of the names that we mentioned earlier, but it is a question of, is the hype real? And how does Dave Doeren deal with that? Right? Because as you said, they've constantly been in that conversation. And I do wonder now where they've added serious talent, where it seems like there's like a lot of momentum around this program, if that will mean different results. The reality is it doesn't always mean different results, Dan.
No, a lot of the times if a coach is impressively winning 9 games every year, that kind of says that he's a 9-game winner as a coach.
Exactly.
Right?
And that's the biggest misnomer, I think, when it comes to preview season.
Right.
And you see it in all the publications that you read. And I don't fault any of these guys who put these together. They all do a fabulous job. I've got 3 of them here in front of me.
Yeah.
But there seems to be this assumption that just because a good coach has won, let's just use a 9-game example, perennial 8 or 9-game winner.
Yeah.
Now you add more talent to that coach's arsenal coming into this new season.
Yeah.
There seems to be an assumption by many that that means this coach will take another jump forward.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't always mean that. More often than not, it doesn't. And that leads to incredible frustration among many fan bases year in and year out. We see it every single year. And so my question is Dave Doeren going to be able to take that next step with this team? I think he's got enough talent to do so. I know he's got the schedule to do so. There's a lot working to NC State's favor. It's just a matter of, can he, when the rubber meets the road, my favorite catchphrase, can he actually translate that talent into more wins on the schedule? And I'm not so sure of that. I still have them in that lead pack here. I still have them in my top 4 true contenders for the ACC. But,
yeah, I mean, look, you think about...
They're the one I'm shakiest on for sure.
Yeah, you look at what has ailed NC State, even recently, like hold Louisville, who ends up in the ACC championship game last year, to 13 points in a losing effort. Like, it's just unacceptable if you have designs of winning this or competing at like 11-1 or something, 10-2 to win the conference. Like losing 24-3 to Duke, an injured Duke at the time they played. It's unacceptable to expect that type of team. And this is a Duke team that was not far off last year with a healthy Riley Leonard. But it's unfair to heap too many expectations in terms of contention on NC State. But because of their recent successes and dramatically outnumbering their failures, I think it's appropriate. And the other element of this too is like the reason we don't. I think the reason we have such an open top of the conference is we are quantifying a lot of these quarterbacks as being good with upside. I'm not sure there's an excellent quarterback in the conference. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, I would say there is full on not an excellent quarterback in this conference today. Like, I think there are, reasonable criticisms of DJU and of Cam Ward and of Cade Klubnik and of Kyron Drones and Max Johnson and Kyle McCord. Like, I think they're deep at the top of like interesting upside guys, but I don't look at any of these guys as like, this guy is so good that they'll be able to weather like an awful week 6 or something like that, because he is just going to carry this team. Whereas the talent of some previous guys in this conference, whether it's Jordan Travis, whether it's Drake May, whoever, going back to Trevor Lawrence, whatever, of quarterbacks in this conference, like, I don't think there's an apparent guy like that who stands alone or stands with another quarterback as, capital E elite or whatever. Not at this moment.
I think the best pure passer might be Preston Stone from SMU.
Okay.
I think that's where we're at. I like Preston Stone a lot. There are plenty of other intriguing names in here. Cam Ward, interesting dual threat guy.
Haynes
Grayson
King,
McCall,
dual threat, yeah.
Great. Grayson McCall can do a lot. We've seen him thrive in various systems. You look at a guy like a Thomas Castellanos from BC.
Dangerous.
Big kid, took over literally two series into BC's season last year from Emmett Moorhead, who we liked before we liked Thomas Castellanos.
Yeah.
He's another name that's really interesting. Haynes King. We love Haynes King on this show.
Yeah.
We'll talk more about Haynes King for sure. there are plenty of names here that I think are very interesting, but I think your point's the right one. There is a lot of uncertainty, even though we feel pretty good about the lead pack of quarterbacks. We don't know to which heights they will ultimately make it.
Yeah,
for lack
and
of better terms.
even some of the best quarterbacks in this conference, because there is something weird, again, about quality and bulk, the all Costco conference, that like even when Jordan Travis was healthy last year, even when Florida State was running the table in the ACC, they were eking by Boston College. They were either down or tied or something heading into the fourth quarter against Duke. This was a very, very good, if not very strong Florida State team last year, but they weren't consistently separating themselves in the way that like an excellent team should. And I don't put that on Jordan Travis per se, but like I wasn't crazy confident in this offense all of the time to be so good that they were holding their own with an excellent defense. So of their own, that is. So that to me is interesting with this conference, that even the excellent recent teams have struggled in their own ways, because week to week, there's just somebody does that one excellent thing, right? If it's Thomas Castellanos, scrambling, or if it's Virginia Tech's pass defense, like there is that element that somebody's just going to bite you via this one specific strength. And that's the ACC.
So is that like the beauty aisle of Costco that we just described? Is that what that is?
The contenders?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think the most popular, well-loved part of the store is probably it's not a food court, but like they have like the $1.50 hot dog and soda. They've got the giant slices of pizza. Like that has the biggest approval rating. Okay, so I don't know if it's the food court.
The food court? We'll say that's the food court.
Yeah.
Florida
those are the teams
Miami,
that are going to
Clemson.
eat the most this year. How
Florida
about
State,
that?
Miami, Clemson, NC State.
Yeah.
Is the fearsome foursome at the top. Now, you mentioned the lurkers. I've broadened that a little bit, and I titled it the lurking tier, and also how did they get the schedule tier? Okay. Which I think is true for three teams.
Yeah.
Three teams in particular. Louisville, Virginia Tech, and I'm really high on SMU. That's the team we disagree on. I'm so high on SMU. I almost can't stand how high I am on SMU this year.
They were right there with Boston College in the bowl game, right? A downtrodden Boston College who lost their coach to become a defensive coordinator in the NFL. They lost by 9? Backup quarterback.
I believe the Wasabi Fenway Bowl to UConn.
So they got that chance to contend with an ACC team and couldn't quite cut it with Boston College. Continue.
We'll save the SMU disagreement for a second.
Lost by 17 to a disappointing TCU last year. Continue.
Louisville is in a really interesting spot this year.
Yes.
Year one under Jeff Brohm was a raging success, 10-4 last season. This year, though, bit of a talent drain, retooling offense as a result. I think the defense will lead this team, and we'll talk more about that on a future episode. The question, though, is on offense, and in particular, Tyler Shuck. They are building this offense now around Tyler Shuck. It is his 7th year in college football.
Yep.
You only get to play 7 years if you're hurt a lot, and he's been hurt a lot. He was rehabbing from a season-ending injury a year ago. Now he has landed with Louisville. After what we saw with Brohm last year with Jack Plummer and how he, in a sense, rehabbed his career, I think we have a fair amount of confidence that Jeff Brohm knows what he's doing, knows how to coach quarterbacks, knows how to coach offense. But what he can't coach is health. And I worry about Louisville. I think that the schedule is there for them. I'm not certain about the offense. I think the defense will be really solid, one of the best in the conference. But the question to me, the big open question is, what happens if Tyler Shuck goes down again?
Sure.
I kind of feel like if Tyler Shuck goes down, the whole thing goes down. And so that's why I'm teetering on Louisville. I like the program. I like the momentum that Jeff Brohm established in just 1 year. I don't like Tyler Shuck as the guy around which the offense will revolve, because I just think there's so much that can go wrong there, if only because of his health. If you get high-level Tyler Shuck, that would be a boon for sure. How often have we seen that, and for how long have we seen that?
Right.
That's the issue for me with Louisville this year.
So I think you're right. And just big picture Louisville's success last year was large part thanks to a good defense and a strong rushing attack. So are you adding pop on offense, firepower on offense? Probably. Yeah. Those receivers should be a year better. They recruited in the portal really well. This isn't a Louisville specific preview, but like this is now year 2 of Jeff Brohm. You got players from all over coming in, and the way they ended the season was disappointing last year. Like I think you're right to, what did you call them? Lurkers, peekers, something like that?
Yeah, lurkers.
I have Louisville in that category. I have Virginia Tech. I even feel a little bit better about Virginia Tech in that category. I don't know if you put SMU there as well. I know you're high on Preston Stone, but I just sort of, what you've seen is what you've gotten out of Jeff Brohm teams and Tyler Shuck, and I'm okay with them there, but for some reason I just am not fully sold there.
Okay. Virginia Tech. Let's go Virginia Tech now.
Yeah.
We have been preaching at the altar of the Hokies for a good 6 months now.
Yeah.
I feel like everybody else was late on the punch with respect to the Virginia Tech schedule. We've been talking it up literally since February.
Yeah.
Okay. It is very, very favorable for the Hokies this year. And my question for you, and I know we'll talk more about this and keep kind of previewing upcoming episodes here. That's not my intention, but
yes,
my question on Virginia Tech, just from afar, is do we like Virginia Tech more because of their team or because of their schedule? And I know the two work hand in hand, but I keep trying to check myself and be realistic about this team. And I'm having this thought that maybe I just like them more because of the schedule. Clearly there's momentum. Like they have improved. I don't mean to say otherwise, but I am fearful that I am liking them more because of the schedule.
Right. Yeah. I hear you on that. I mean, by the way, their schedule, they have what, Marshall and Rutgers early on? They lost those games last year. So we can pump the brakes a little bit on the schedule. Those are both road games last year. But they did lose those 2 matchups. And I just wonder with Virginia Tech as it relates to like their contention status is, did they just improve to like pretty good last year? And are we overreacting to improvement as ready to contend? Part of me thinks that like we should see like what the 5th best performance from Virginia Tech looks like this year before we go all in on their ready to compete, which
I agree.
We're not putting Virginia Tech in that top tier. So I think we're on the same page here that like they've got more to prove. Kyron Jones has more to prove as a passer, and with what they return, there's every reason in the world to believe that with this schedule, as we perceive it in, mid-July, that they should be able to win more clunkers, win losable games. But like they just lost to full-on below-average teams last year to start the year. They weren't ready to compete at the start of last year. They improved over the course of the season. So I'm not ready to jump into the Virginia Tech waters quite yet.
Yeah, a lot back.
Yeah.
And did establish momentum as the year wore on. We're both pretty high on Kyron Jones.
Yeah.
I'm interested in hearing your full Virginia Tech preview.
Sure.
To see what you uncovered.
Yeah. Oh, there's much more to like about Virginia Tech right now. They deserve to be in that like looking in, are they winning games 23-20 rather than losing games 23-20 against whoever, Boston College or Wake or Duke or something like that, winnable games, because it wasn't the case last year. Have they arrived to that level?
We disagree vehemently on SMU.
Yeah.
I think it's a fair question to ask if SMU can contend right away.
Okay.
I think this is a good team. There's a lot back. I think there's a lot pointed in a good direction. I think the schedule is marvelous. You apparently disagree with me.
Yes.
On that front. But my sense is that this is one of the take a Toa things that we can establish here.
Oh, more takes. Why it burns.
So the SMU over-under is 8. They were 11-3 last season. As you mentioned, lost the bowl game to BC in the Wasabi Bowl.
Yeah.
SMU is 8 over-under. I am aggressively going over on SMU and the 8. Would you like to take the opposite side of the bet, since you apparently don't like SMU at all?
I didn't say I don't like SMU at all.
That's how it sounded to me when we talked earlier.
I'm just telling you why I don't feel like they're ready to compete.
Why are they not ready to compete?
For the conference? How'd they do against Power 5 teams last year? How'd they do against Power 5 teams last year when they won 11 games? They lose all of those Power 5 games? Oklahoma, TCU, Boston College?
Last year, their losses were against Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Were against TCU. And, of course, lost the Boston College game in the bowl game. Yeah.
Okay. So after they lost to TCU, here are their defensive SP Plus opponent rankings. 116, 81, 130, 118, 114, 133, 111. Now, I'm not holding it against SMU that they played a bunch of busted defenses, but I think you're being a little bit, you're being seduced by that 11-3 without, I think, fully recognizing how they got there. And I think there's always going to be an adjustment period when you make a move like this. I think Preston Stone is absolutely a Power 5 quarterback. I think some of the receiving talent and skill talent they have is absolutely worthy of winning a bunch of Power 5 games, especially in the ACC against what I said were like possibly 13 out of 17 disappointing defenses. So maybe that fits in, that aligns well with what SMU has done lately. I just think for all these teams, there's an adjustment period when you make this kind of move. And if you talk about SMU's schedule specifically, they're going to be on the road, right? SMU has at Stanford and at Duke back-to-back, what I'm calling a mileage plus double-double.
Those teams stink, though, Dan. Those aren't good teams.
Ty, I don't care. Okay.
All right. That's fine.
It's tough to win on the road. It just is. And it's a new Manny Diaz Duke team. And, Stanford has a ways to go on defense. I'm with you. And I'm with you that no Clemson or Miami. They've got a soft landing with Pitt, BC, and at Virginia, Cal, I think, to sort of finish things out. I think they're going to be a good team. But I'm not hot and bothered right now with SMU's ceiling in the ACC because I just think it's going to be tough to come in and make a splash. I do.
I mean, the recruiting rankings over the last...
Been good in the portal, though.
5 years. Let's say over the last 5 years. Recruiting rankings on the SMU side compared to their peers, it's not favorable. It definitely supports your case that there will be a little bit more of a speed bump as they join this conference. And typically, we do see big issues on defense whenever anybody steps up, whether you're coming up from FCS to FBS, not true in all cases, of course.
Right.
But whenever you're seeing that upgrade, defense is generally, the trenches and defense is where you tend to see the biggest disparities.
Sure.
And so there's absolutely a case to be made on the defensive side of the ball for SMU that they're not going to be ready. I do think the offense will be pretty good. I think they'll be able to score. And in a conference that does not knock me over with a ton of brick wall defenses, I think SMU is very interesting. I am not picking SMU to necessarily go on and win the conference, but I put them comfortably in this lurking and also how'd they get the schedule category, because I do feel like they're going to knock somebody off. And I also think the schedule works to their advantage. I get what you're saying about 2 consecutive road games, Stanford and Duke. What'd you call it? The mileage plus?
Yeah, the mileage plus double-double. Yeah.
But of the other teams on here, they do have back-to-back games at home against Florida State, on the road against Louisville. But the rest of this schedule is workable. Nevada's a mess. HCU, they'll beat HCU. BYU, I think they could beat BYU.
It's a Friday night game, I think. Yeah.
Pitt, Boston College, Virginia, and Cal. Those are all winnable games.
Yeah, you probably thought so in the Wasabi Fenway Bowl too, didn't you?
I did think so in the Wasabi Fenway Bowl.
Yeah, but guess what? Thomas Castellanos. All you have to do is stop him. Couldn't do it.
All right. We at least agree that they belong in this lurking category. Sure. Maybe I will be able to talk you into SMU.
Perhaps.
As you go through your preview. Now, you did the full deep dive on SMU, so maybe I shouldn't be talking. But I will try to convince you otherwise.
No, it's okay.
Next tier up here. By the way, what do we call this from a Costco standpoint? What's lurking and with kind of just hiding, I guess.
I think this is the samples, right? You walk around Costco and they've got do you want to try like a pig in a blanket? So they're just sampling their possibility to contend here. They're sampling, top tier status. So that's what I'm going with.
Next up is plucky teams with questions for me.
Okay.
teams with a significant pluck factor, but also a fair amount of questions.
So this is the close. They stack up a bunch of close. There's a lot to pick through. You know, there could be some diamonds in the rough. You're going to get some like baggy Columbia cargo shorts as well.
Do you remember when we got that question? Somebody sent in on a Q&A asking us, I forget what the other choice was, but one of the two options was you can either do this or you can wear Kirkland branded clothing for the rest of your life. Do you remember that question?
I do remember. Yeah.
That might have been another point of disagreement between
Did you say yes on Kirkland?
I think I did.
There's
not
pretty
all
good
bad.
stuff. I hear you, but I don't know. I like a little zazz to my look.
I've got North Carolina.
As I'm sitting here wearing a polo shirt that's just kind of off green with nothing on it. Yeah. Continue.
I've got North Carolina, Cal, Syracuse, Georgia Tech, Pitt, and Boston College. What is that? 6 teams?
Repeat
17?
that one more time.
North Carolina, Cal, Syracuse, Georgia Tech, Pitt, Boston College. Those are my 6 teams that are plucky but have serious questions.
Plucky with questions. I'd put Syracuse there. I'd put North Carolina there. I'd put Georgia Tech there. I'm not sure if I'd put anybody else there.
Cal, Pitt, Boston College. You put them down a rung?
I would put Pitt down a run. I'd put Cal in BC. New coach at BC. Cal's got a lot to prove. Losing an offensive coordinator, bringing back a bad defense. Pitt seems like they're kind of in shambles, but new offensive coordinator is, I don't know, there's hope there, but like, man, the depths to which Pitt fell last year. They returned a bunch on offense, but I don't know if I can fully get energized by where Pitt is right now.
Why don't we talk about the teams we agree on then?
Okay.
The teams we agree on are North Carolina, Syracuse, and Georgia Tech.
Correct.
North Carolina, for me, it's a 2-part question of, could Jeff Collins fix the defense? Can anybody fix the defense, frankly?
Right.
Is it even a coaching thing that can fix the defense, or is it a talent thing? We may find out more by December, of course.
And you'll remember, like, you go to last year with North Carolina's defense, and like early to mid-October, there was like, Gene Chizik, though, right? Is he got? Nope, has not.
No.
Has not fixed it.
No. And the second question for them is their quarterback situation. So if you trace NC State, North Carolina, back through the last couple of years, you've had Sam Howell, you've had Drake May. You've been blessed to have high-level quarterback play. These guys get drafted into the NFL. Even before him, there was a Mitch Trubisky era. Like, they have had good quarterback play at UNC.
Sure.
This is not to say that Max Johnson will not be a good quarterback, but Max Johnson is most certainly not going to be a first-round draft pick. He also has health issues. He's bounced around a lot. So
who among us, Ty? My jaw hurts. My hamstrings are sore. My lower back. Continue.
Yeah, we're in our 40s. He's still in his 20s.
He might be in his 40s.
He could be in his 40s at this point. But can he stay upright? And how must they adjust that offense, if at all, to accommodate him? He is not as good a passer as either of those guys that I just mentioned. Does it look different? I like Omarion Hampton.
I was going to say, he
really
has maybe the best play action, or one of the best play action situations in the league, in that Omarion Hampton certainly looks like the best running back. If he's not the best running back in the ACC, it means somebody probably emerges this year as it, because he seems like the obvious first-team guy.
Yeah. So that's my question there.
Yeah.
The Georgia Tech conversation is damn interesting. I am super excited to talk Georgia Tech with you.
Okay.
Because we're really high on Haynes King. I think this offense is going to be able to score points like crazy. I don't know if they're going to be able to play defense again. This is a half-team situation for Georgia Tech, and really an open question of, to what end, if at all, have they bridged that gap in the offseason between offense and defense?
Yeah. Georgia Tech coming off of a year, you're right about the big defensive questions, and they tried to address it in the portal, which I think to a certain extent they did, and hiring a new coordinator. I'm just, with Georgia Tech, I like Brent Key. I really like Brent Key, actually. But there is something about at least Georgia Tech's 2023 heading into the season. Like, they didn't always lose, but when they lost, boy, howdy, did they lose. Right? They make it count. Did they stand out? You want to lose to Bowling Green? All right. Not by like 3? Okay. That's the thing with me with Georgia Tech. When you have, whether it was the turnovers, the interceptions, it was the turnovers on defense that kept them in games or made results look closer than they probably should have been. Like I think it was the Georgia game was like a 7 or 8 point game. Like that was back and forth for a chunk there. But they would just give away games. They would give away leads. So it was one of those things where you have to buy into Georgia Tech this year that they're going to be a lot more buttoned up in everything that they do. Which is fine, right? That is the definition of frisky. That 1 week they're going to lose a stupid game, and the next week they're going to beat, an 8-2 team or something. That there is that element to Georgia Tech where you're just like, you cannot blink in a good way or not.
The Syracuse conversation, we're going to be having this conversation all year.
Yeah.
And it is, at least to start the year, how long of a ramp-up period does Fran Brown need? Like, Fran Brown comes over from Georgia. He gave an impassioned introductory presser.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you're a Syracuse fan, you got to be excited to be able to get this guy. He seems like he wants to be there. Of course, everyone wants to be there until they decide they don't, until a better job comes along. Hopefully that is not the case for Syracuse and Fran Brown. If early returns are there, it's because of what they've done very quickly in the transfer portal with Kyle McCord, with Fadil Diggs, we mentioned earlier. There are others. He has definitely hit the ground running in that sense. And I think Syracuse has a good schedule. I think that's part of why we like them, why we both feel that they're plucky. It is, though, truly a question of how long is it going to take to get everyone aligned. It's not always easy when you're stepping foot on a new campus, you're a new coach with new schemes and new players. To get everything organized, especially for a first-time head coach, that quickly, that might be a little much. That said, Syracuse is a weird place to play. I reiterate that the schedule is kind of beautiful.
Yeah.
And so there are a lot of things working in his favor. I just don't know how quickly he can reboot that program.
There's something especially freeing about, one, hiring a new coach, two, returning enough familiar talent, and three, being like kind of so off the geographic beaten path that the expectation, like, it's a good year if Syracuse goes 8-4 and knocks off a couple really good teams and wins the games they should win. If you go back to when, Dino Babers like won more games than what they look like they should have won, and got
exactly
throttled by Notre Dame in Yankee Stadium. But like, Syracuse is closer to Toronto than it is to Virginia, right? That, like, there is something about Syracuse where, like, you can just kind of be light on your feet about succeeding there, and to get Kyle McCord, to bring back Oronde Gadsden coming off of injury, like the guys on defense coming back, the schedule, as you mentioned, like, I just think there's something that, like, in the right way, they can succeed by being carefree, because it's that year one thing. There's juice there. There's, fresh blood, all those things that, like, I love Syracuse this year. I might love them as a 7-5 team, but
Sure.
I love the idea of Syracuse being dangerous this year in their own way.
I think I'm with you on that one, Dan.
Yeah.
I'm really with you on that one. All right. Let's close this out then. So we had a light disagreement on Cal, Pitt, and BC.
Yeah.
And we can kind of put that conversation on the side for a minute. Are there any teams you would group in the same category as Cal, Pitt, and BC? Because of the remaining schools, we've got Duke, we've got UVA, we've got Wake, and we've got Stanford, all of which I have in my bottom tier, which I just labeled drive for 6. I don't think any of those teams are going to be very good. And I can describe why, and I'm sure we'll talk more about it when we do team previews and whatnot. But Cal, Pitt, and BC, do any of them, in your view, belong in that bottom tier with those other 4?
I think Pitt probably stands above because of at least Pat Narduzzi's track record in this conference, whereas, like, Manny Diaz, who knows? Justin Wilcox, who knows? Bill O'Brien, who knows? Like, there is something familiar about Pat Narduzzi succeeding in the ACC and taking a bad, a defense that was down and, transforming it, or, having the success he's had on offense occasionally with the right quarterback. That he gets a little bit of the benefit and the opportunity to turn things around in my eyes, and he's bringing guys back that, like, I think Pitt has done more to earn, say, a slight benefit of the doubt. Like, yep, you were embarrassing at times last year, but I don't know. I could squint and see, what did you call the previous tier? Friskiness, danger, whatever. I could see that with Pitt. Yes.
It is a question of, was last year a blip? Was
Right.
last year a blip? Was last year and the year before, frankly, a blip? And can they get back to playing defense? Will this new offense take? I think that's the big question.
They've been like, their portal stuff has been so bad, it seems, though.
It's been bad, and Pitts unfortunately fell victim a little bit to this new portal era that we're in, where guys want to go elsewhere. We saw that a couple years ago with Jordan Addison, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the great early examples of this working against teams of Pitt's caliber. The shift on offense, though, to more of the up-tempo stuff, I just, especially because the defense last year was in such a bad place.
Yeah.
I worry that switching to an up-tempo offense has a negative effect on the defense, which is then overstressed. Maybe they don't have the bodies, and Pitt turns into a half team overnight in a really weird way. Now, they've been a half team before. It was just the shoe was on the other foot, defense versus offense. But Pitt's interesting.
I might even put Virginia in that interesting category. Like, I might separate Virginia from BC. Duke just loses so much. I'm kind of high on Manny Diaz. I'm high on, what the offensive ceiling might be at a certain point this year. I think it's going to take a minute, but you lose close before you win close, hypothetically. Maybe not if you're Scott Frost in Nebraska, but like, you look at the way Virginia competed, and look, they had, maybe the best receiver, one of the best, like 3 or 4 receivers in the conference, in Malik Washington, and he's gone. There's still enough with Virginia that they played hard, they fought, they lost close, they won close in a couple of instances where they probably shouldn't have. That, like, I'm not engorged about Virginia.
Whoa, settle.
Sorry. We haven't done Patriot League, so I got to get these words out somehow.
No, that's okay. It's all right.
But I've got an eye on them. I've got an eye on Virginia as somebody that I don't think is as far off from respectability as it might appear from afar. I know that sort of sounds hedgy, Ty. I understand, but I can understand being in a world, an ACC multiverse, in which Virginia makes a bowl game this year.
We'll put Duke, we'll put Wake, we'll put Stanford in the bottom, in the cellar. A lot of what you said about True is Pitt, I could go along with it on the UVA front. UVA is interesting.
I wish
like
they had
Tony
a better
Elliott.
home field. I don't know I don't have their schedule. I do have their schedule in front of me if you want to get into Virginia's.
No, let's save it.
We'll save that.
Where I want to go with this, though, is Cal.
Yeah.
And I came into this not thinking very highly at all of Cal. I came out of it feeling like they're going to knock somebody off.
You're hot for Ott?
I am hot for Ott.
I'm so sorry, everybody.
I'm hot for Ott.
Okay.
And I wonder if Cal is sort of like the ACC EFIS pitch this year.
Well, location-wise,
for sure. And I think they're going to need to lean into what they're good at, which is their offensive line actually wasn't horrible last year, at least took strides forward. And they've got arguably one of the 2 best running backs in the conference with Jaden Ott. Yeah. And I think if they steer more into that on offense and ditch to some extent the up-tempo stuff that they were doing a year ago.
They hired from within, right? Mike
hired
Loesch,
from within, promoted their offensive line coach, who did a good job with that line. They're a little bit deeper at the quarterback position, and I think there's some more certainty there, whether it's Chandler Rogers or Fernando Mendoza, who played a good deal of the games last year. I just think on offense, there are pieces in place that could make them plucky and interesting. And anytime you've got a playmaker like Ott, you can catch somebody. Defensively, which has been Justin Wilcox's calling card, they vastly underperformed last year. And so there's been a bit of a trend line there. They need to try and reverse that. I do wonder if playing the up-tempo offense affected the defense in an adverse way last season. And so I think maybe reassessing a little bit how they play offensive football could also benefit them on defense.
Sure.
So I'm higher on Cal than you. I'm also higher on Boston College. The Boston College roster is not as bad as you would think.
No, it's not. And there's pieces. Yeah.
There are definitely pieces. Thomas Castellanos is a big friggin' dude.
Yeah.
He's like 6'5", 240. He's built like DJ U, and he can move and he can run. He needs to be better about not throwing interceptions, but ran for 13 touchdowns a year ago. I think Bill O'Brien did an excellent job taking that roster, hitting the ground running, plugging guys in via the portal that can help. And I think if nothing more, BC will be better and will be serviceable this season. Last year it ended up being a bit of a transition year with Castellanos getting the job early, them kind of retooling the offense a bit to accommodate him.
Mm-hmm.
I think starting fresh with Bill O'Brien, bringing his expertise at the quarterback position into the fold will be beneficial for Boston College. So I think they will catch somebody. Boston College is always a weird place to play. Like we have a couple of those spots in the ACC, Syracuse, Boston College, certainly now like Cal and Stanford fit that mold as well. I think BC is going to catch somebody. I'm not sure who.
They're weird in that you can take a call while you're watching the game in the stadium.
Correct.
You don't have to pinch closed your other ear. You can just take a call. Be like, no, it's a good time.
You open your phone.
It's 14-3 in the second quarter. Nobody's doing anything. Yeah.
I don't know if we have anything else that we want to add in our Drive for Six category at the bottom. What are we labeling these two tiers from a Costco standpoint? So the North Carolina, Syracuse, Georgia Tech plucky tier, and then whatever we're grouping Pitt, UVA, Cal, and BC into.
I guess they're the bakery. Still bacon, Ty. Just dough in the oven, waiting to see how it comes out. I don't know.
Okay.
Or they're getting their tires changed at the auto body section of a number of different Costcos.
Duke lost a lot. I think Stanford's still a good year away. And Wake, we can talk more about Wake.
Wake is interesting in that, I mean, they're in a similar boat philosophically as like Pitt, where like you have to give Dave Clawson some benefit of the doubt that he can figure things out in a conference in which he's succeeded. It's been a minute, and defensively they've kind of fallen off a cliff, and they have, interesting guys on both sides of the ball and have been a thorn in a number of team sides. But if you are sort of taking them at surface level where they've been these past couple of years, you're like, man, I don't, losing Sam Hartman last year, Mitch Griffiths wasn't it, and he's gone now. Where they're just like, how can you win with this? How can you go 7-5 with this roster when so many of the teams on their schedule are so proactively adding quality players, starters, depth pieces, whatever, and Wake is just sort of trying to do what it did in like 2019 or whatever, they really hit their high water mark.
All right, that does it for our tiers. The way that this will work now for parts 2 and 3, we're going to go through, we're going to talk about individual teams, Dan.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Explain our work here, explain our reasoning with respect to our tiers and how we see the conference shaking out. My ACC championship game is Miami against Clemson, with Miami winning.
Okay.
Have you given any thought to yours?
I definitely have Syracuse. I just no. My ACC championship is probably going to be, I think I probably have like a repeat of like maybe Florida State, Miami.
Okay. I could see it.
And I'm not super high on either of those quarterbacks, but West Coast footprint, yeah, sure. Florida State, Miami, and I the thing I like about both of those teams is that hypothetically, they can win an ugly game against an inferior opponent. I think more often than the rest of the teams on their schedule because of star power on defense mostly.
All right. Well, write in again, solveverbo@gmail.com. Hit follow, hit subscribe wherever it is you're listening to this episode. And of course, footballers.com is where you can go for more info on the bonus content, the ad-free content, the online dynasty that we are spinning up. I think there's 10 teams in it now, so there's plenty of room to grow.
Nice.
Footballers.com is where you can go for more information on that, Dan. We will be dropping our next episode on Sunday for the Verballerhood, and then part 3 will drop on Tuesday. After that, we'll launch right into the Big 12. We've got the power conferences in front of us. We've got Notre Dame and the Independents in front of us. We're going to do every team, every conference here over the next couple weeks. I also did want to throw this out if I could. Just as a means of keeping ourselves honest.
Yeah.
And in tune with the Verballerhood. It is just you and I doing all of this research. We don't have any producers or anything that are helping us with this.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it would be wise to mention retroactively the things that we screw up.
Oh, okay.
It was brought to my attention from Verballer Dan out on Twitter that my analysis of the Miami, Ohio schedule was great, but also from 2023 and not 2024.
But did you get the 2023 schedule correct?
I think.
Okay.
I don't even know if I got that right. I botched Miami, Ohio in a pretty bad
Okay.
way. I like Miami, Ohio. I like Chuck Martin.
Yeah.
They're one of the best 2 teams in the MAC, but I screwed that one
We
up.
regret the error.
We regret the error.
Yeah.
The other thing that I messed up, and I actually don't have anything for you. I think you might have pitched a perfect game
There's zero
here.
chance, but continue.
The thing that I messed up, it was the most tie screw up ever. I was talking about Memphis when we did the American preview, and I said to you that per projections from our friend Bill Connolly, they are the biggest half team in the American.
Right.
Turns out I did the math wrong on that one. I wasn't too far off. The biggest half team is UAB. There are 94 spots between UAB's offense and their bad defense. Memphis, it's only 91 spots between their offense and their bad defense. So still the conference favorite, still a really big gap, definitely still a half team.
Yes.
But in the interest of being accurate and honest and transparent with the verballerhood,
Yeah.
that was another mistake that I made. So if there are any other ones that you notice and you want to send them in, do so kindly. We are doing all this research. It's taking a lot of our time.
We want
to do
people
it.
to comb through these episodes like the golf rulebook experts who send the PGA notes like, actually, that was an illegal drop. And the person who sends us the most errors, maybe we'll send them a shirt by the end of preview season. I would listen more closely to me if you're trying to look. I mean, Ty screwed up early, but I think long game. I think I screwed up Cal's offensive coordinator's name today. I think it's Mike Bloch. Or Bloch.
Yeah.
I don't know how you pronounce it. But I didn't have that B in front. I think I said Mike Loesch. But yeah, I would, with a fine-tooth comb, go through everything we say, not grammar-wise. We promise nothing in terms of how well we do or don't speak. But if we screw something up, very politely let us know. And if somebody is particularly adept at catching our errors, we'll send you like a Win Your Clunkers shirt. How about that? That seems apt.
The yet unreleased Win Your Clunkers shirt.
Yeah, that's coming soon though, guys. Win Your Clunkers.
We'll be dropping on our new and improved merch store.
It's a good one though. You like how it looks?
I do.
Do you have your own copy yet?
No, did you get one?
No, not yet. I will.
There are 4 out in the wild that we gave away to some contest winners.
Yeah.
And some other folks who
They're
helped
really
us with
nice.
feedback. But that's it. You and I don't even have them. We know what they look like, but
Or I guess you can go to like Kith or Supreme in New York. I think they're going to be dropping there first, right? Those are very hip stores, Ty.
Sure.
Those are very cool places that the youth
I've never heard of
shops.
either of those in my life.
Supreme?
Tells you everything you need to know about me, Dan.
You've never seen that like red Supreme rectangle? Really?
Never.
I figured you would have seen at least that. Kith is different, but yeah. These are like Ari Wasserman places to shop.
All right. Well, look.
Yeah.
Thank you one and all for bearing with us here. Hopefully you learned something. We're going to get a lot deeper with this conference on our next 2 episodes. For that guy over there, my good friend, Dan Rubenstein, for myself, Ty Hildenbrandt, we'll talk to you all on Sunday. In the meantime, stay solid.
Peace.